What's up, you goofball? This is the Fight Monk, and I'm here to talk about UFC 265, Gane versus Lewis, where Derrick Lewis and Ciryl Gane will be fighting for the Interim Heavyweight Championship, while Francis Ngannou and the UFC sort their problems out. But let's get right into that match. So, Derrick Lewis is basically a meme fighter. You probably know him as that guy who said, "Where's Ronda's fine ass?" after he knocked out Ronda Rousey's boyfriend. You also may know him as that guy who took off his shorts in a post-fight interview with Joe Rogan and said that his balls were hot. Ciryl Gane, you probably know him as the prospect in the heavyweight division that is supposed to take over the sport. He is known as a very dominant fighter, and he came from kickboxing. He's French. A lot of people think he's very good looking. So they think he's a potential star that's going to take over the sport and possibly even be a bigger star than Francis Ngannou. He's also undefeated. This fight may not be that good of a fight just because both Ciryl Gane and Derrick Lewis are both very slow-paced fighters. Contrary to what a lot of people bill Derrick Lewis as, the UFC likes to bill him as a crazy entertaining fighter, but in reality, he is very slow-paced until he randomly explodes at you. Ciryl Gane is more of a patient volume fighter, and he will also counter-strike a bit with you, but it's mostly just striking and occasional takedown attempts to try to confuse you and get you thinking about other things. So Derrick Lewis is on a 4-fight winning streak. His last win was definitely his best win, which was against Curtis Blaydes, a fighter who a lot of people thought was going to be the next champion, and he may still be the future heavyweight champion, but Derrick Lewis did a good job of getting Curtis Blaydes' timing and waiting until he got careless and shot in for a sloppy takedown, and Derrick Lewis timed him with a good uppercut. Ciryl Gane is undefeated with 9 wins. He has 6 wins in the UFC. His last fight was his highest ranked fight by far, which was Alexander Volkov, who was supposed to maybe fight for the title next, but they made that match and Ciryl Gane beat him dominantly over 5 rounds. Before that, he also beat Jairzinho Rozenstruik dominantly over 5 rounds as well, who was another kickboxer. Gane showing that he can go 5 rounds with someone and keep a good pace and win rounds, which is very important. I would say Derrick Lewis has a bit higher level of opposition just because he's been fighting the top of the division for about 4 years or so now, whereas Ciryl Gane has fought the top competition in the heavyweight division, but he has not been fighting them for very long. So I would say his experience may be the deciding factor in this fight. We'll have to see. But he does fight like a young veteran. He acts like a very experienced fighter despite not having that many wins on his record so far. As far as parallels for other fighters that they have both fought, that would be a similar matchup. Ciryl Gane has fought Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who is a very patient counter-striker. The only difference is that Jairzinho Rozenstruik isn't very explosive. Jairzinho Rozenstruik has very heavy hands, but he is not the athlete like Derrick Lewis is. Derrick Lewis surprises people with his speed and his power. Usually the way Derrick Lewis is landing punches is because he is exploding towards you and hitting you with something crazy hard that you don't see coming. Gane really hasn't fought anyone like Derrick Lewis. Jairzinho Rozenstruik was kind of similar, and he beat him thoroughly for 5 rounds straight. I would say that Lewis is someone very hard to game plan for just because he is so unpredictable, and it's also hard to replicate how fast he is for how big he is. For Derrick Lewis, he has fought someone similar to Ciryl Gane, which was Alexander Volkov, who is also a very patient volume striker who wins rounds. Derrick Lewis was losing every single minute of that entire fight until he decided to go for broke and landed a crazy Hail Mary punch in the last 10 seconds of that fight and knocked him out. It was very dramatic theater, and it was very entertaining to watch, but that kind of game planning does not win you fights consistently over time. As far as the striking goes, I would say Ciryl Gane has the advantage just because he comes from kickboxing. Derrick Lewis has the advantage in striking power and speed. Gane is not very powerful in his strikes. Like, you can tell he's got some weight to his punches, but he has never hurt anyone with them. He's kind of buzzed a few people, but it's nothing crazy like Derrick Lewis. Gane is also very fast for the division. He's got the foot speed and the punching speed of maybe a middleweight, and he is in heavyweight. So he's very, very fast and fleet of foot. Derrick Lewis is different. He is very plodding, but when he decides he wants to explode at you, he is very tough to time and get a good read on. As far as the wrestling goes, I think Derrick Lewis might have the advantage here just because when he got into the UFC, a lot of people don't know this, but he was actually a wrestler when he came to the UFC. He would mostly win his fights by wrestling you down to the ground and then ground and pound. That was his main way of winning. Ciryl Gane has been getting better at wrestling. Usually what he uses it for is to confuse his opponents and mix it up a little bit, get you thinking about something else so that he can bail on the takedown if it doesn't work immediately and then land some strikes, maybe an elbow or so. It gets you thinking about the level change. Then he can feint the takedown and then land something up high. As far as the grappling goes, Derrick Lewis actually has very surprisingly good submission defense. I don't think he's going to have to use that here because Ciryl Gane is not a submission artist. I know he has 2 wins by submission in the UFC, but that is not his main specialty. He'll take it if it's there, but that was against lower level opposition, and I think it's going to be hard to get something on Derrick Lewis because Derrick Lewis has gotten out of a lot of submissions against very good submission grapplers. As far as X factors go, I would say that Derrick Lewis has got the punching speed and power advantage, but Ciryl Gane has got the foot speed advantage and the kicking advantage for sure. Derrick Lewis doesn't really like throw a lot of kicks except for low kicks occasionally, which is actually how he beat a very timid Francis Ngannou. He literally just beat him with low kicks because they didn't want to strike with each other. As far as weaknesses go, I think Ciryl Gane, his weakness or something that could get him into trouble here is that he gets a little too comfortable sometimes when he's landing a lot of punches on people, and he thinks that he has your timing and your rhythm and your distance down. And once he feels comfortable, he starts to stand in front of you a little bit more, and that has gotten him not into trouble in the past, but more like in danger because people have timed him a little bit and actually landed some punches on him. And you can't be perfect all the time when you're standing in front of someone like that. Derrick Lewis's weaknesses or something that could get him into trouble here would probably be that he waits a little bit too much for the perfect opportunity to land something. He throws away rounds sometimes just trying to wait for the perfect punch. Recently, he's gotten a bit better at that, though. He actually tries to explode a bit more often and land punches more often than he used to. For a while there, it was just him trying to shoot double legs, and then he would either get reversed and end up on the bottom, or he would get out of that and then wait for the perfect punch until he loses the decision. That's usually how his fights would go back then. But I think he's gotten a lot better at that now. He likes to wait still, but he does it a bit more consistently and more often. So he's still trying to preserve his cardio, but he knows how to use it a bit better. So he'll still explode occasionally, and that works for his fighting style a bit better. The question I have going into this fight for Derrick Lewis is, will he be able to figure out Gane's timing, and will he be able to explode enough to where he can actually land some meaningful offense? I don't think he's going to win the kicking game, so he's going to have to try to figure out something to get Gane to feel more comfortable in front of him to where he can land something big. But Gane is very good at circling out, lateral movement, and also he likes to back up in straight lines sometimes. So maybe if Gane gets careless and backs up in a straight line, Derrick Lewis could maybe chase him down and land something. Questions I have for Ciryl Gane would be, can he go through this whole fight being patient enough to where he is not going to get punished for possibly getting careless? In this fight, as far as what they should do, I think Derrick Lewis should try to lull Gane to getting comfortable. Also, I think Derrick Lewis would have decent success with maybe trying to faking a takedown and then using that to get a bit closer to Gane, because while Gane's trying to defend a takedown, he may leave his chin exposed or possibly his body, and Derrick Lewis could maybe land a good body shot or a head shot, something like that. But yeah, the only way I see Derrick Lewis having good success is by trying to not give too much reads in the striking to Gane, because if Gane sees your punches and gets your timing down and your range down, he's going to figure you out, and he's going to actually be able to land more meaningful offense on you. Because as he learns more about you, he builds more strikes on top of that, and he keeps varying up his offense. So Derrick Lewis needs to not give him any reads at all, except for occasional throwaway takedowns into punches, something like that. Or just not give him anything and wait until Gane gets too close to him, and then he can land something. What Gane should do to win this fight? He should fight exactly how he fought the Rozenstruik fight, except don't get so complacent in standing in front of him for too much. He should also be a bit more defensively responsible, because I think near the end of the fight, Rozenstruik started to push the pace when he realized he was losing the fight, and Ciryl Gane was not being careless, but he was not giving any respect to Rozenstruik, and I think that would be bad if he started to not even respect Derrick Lewis's power here. Seems like he's not even respecting him in the matchup for the training camp, because he actually went out and told someone that to train for this fight, he told his training partners to just throw one punch at a time. And I don't think that is the correct way to do that, because your training partners are not going to be able to emulate Derrick Lewis's speed or power. Yes, they may be able to throw one punch at a time, but that is not the same thing. So Gane should not get too cocky and too careless, because he is a young prospect. There is a real possibility that Derrick Lewis could land a Hail Mary shot on Gane just because of Gane's confidence and Derrick Lewis's persistence. He'll keep trying till the end to land something big, whereas Gane, once he feels like he's comfortably winning the fight, he will start to play games out there and get a bit loose, and you should not be loose around Derrick Lewis. But to me, my prediction, I think Ciryl Gane is going to win a decision. He needs to be very careful in the last round, and I could even see him getting hurt in the last round. And Derrick Lewis is a very good finisher, so he needs to be careful for that. But as long as Gane can stay safe, I think he does win a comfortable, unanimous decision, possibly winning every single round. The only other way I could see this fight going is Gane winning every single round until he randomly gets knocked out by Derrick Lewis, which could totally happen. That sounds like it could totally happen. All right, onto the co-main event. It is at bantamweight. It is former featherweight champion Jose Aldo going up against Pedro Munoz. Jose Aldo, known to have a very long title reign at featherweight, but I think how most casual MMA fans know him as the guy to get knocked out by Conor McGregor in 13 seconds, which is unfortunate because he is one of the GOAT fighters in all of MMA, but he never gets the respect that he deserves just because of that one fight. This fight against Pedro Munoz is going to be a very good fight because Pedro Munoz pushes a pace on people and throws a lot of low kicks. Pedro Munoz also will trade punches with you as well. Pedro Munoz is probably famous for that fight that he had with Cody Garbrandt, where he was giving Cody trouble with the low leg kicks, and then Cody started realizing that he was losing the fight, so Cody just started going insane and trying to knock out Pedro Munoz, and Pedro Munoz just has a really good chin, so he was able to take all those hits and come back with his own. And we all know Cody Garbrandt doesn't have the best chin, so he wasn't able to take as many as Pedro was and got the knockout. So that's probably what he's best known for. He's also just a good action fighter in general. This is going to be a very good fight between them two. I could see this being the fight of the night, honestly. As long as Pedro Munoz pushes a good pace on Jose Aldo, Aldo will fight the fight that you want to fight with him. He is pretty much good everywhere, and so he's okay with being an all-terrain fighter. If you want to push the pace on him, he'll oblige, and he'll come back at you as well. This is kind of a dangerous fight for Aldo just because I know his chin is pretty good at bantamweight here. He's still taken a lot of damage over the years, and Pedro Munoz has got a granite chin. Aldo has better boxing for sure, and he probably has better leg kicking. I bet the jiu-jitsu is pretty close. Munoz is actually known to be a grappler, so I think that this fight isn't going to end up on the ground at all, though, because Jose Aldo has the best takedown defense, in the entire UFC, aside from maybe Kamaru Usman. But not a lot of people have even shot takedowns on Kamaru Usman, so that doesn't really hold as much weight as Aldo having almost 100% takedown defense against every team alpha male fighter out there. So their recent record, Jose Aldo, in his last fight, beat Marlon Vera to an easy decision. Before that, though, he actually gave Petr Yan, the champion at the time of bantamweight, a good bit of trouble. He actually gave him a pretty hard fight, but Petr Yan's gas tank is what won him the fight and eventually got him the TKO. That was a rough fight to watch just because of the end. Referee wouldn't stop it in time. Before that, he pretty much got a win over Marlon Moraes. Even though he didn't technically get the win, everyone pretty much thinks that he got that that decision win, which is why he was given the title shot after that. And before that, he lost a fight to the current featherweight champion, Alexander Volkanovski. No shame in losing to any of those guys. Jose Aldo's still a very formidable dude. Pedro Munoz is coming off a win against Jimmy Rivera where his leg kicks did the attritional damage and won him the fight mostly. Jimmy Rivera is mostly a boxer, and Pedro Munoz had a very good game plan of kicking the legs. Before that, though, he lost a close decision to Frankie Edgar. I thought Pedro Munoz won that fight, if I'm not mistaken. I think Frankie Edgar did a lot of backing up and landing decent combinations, but he was getting out-kicked and out-punched for the most part. Before that, he got absolutely dominated by Aljamain Sterling on the feet. That's going to be a great fight, though. I think Aldo has the striking advantage, probably the wrestling advantage, but maybe not the grappling advantage. The way I see Munoz winning this fight is trying to kick with Jose Aldo. I don't think he should try to box with Jose Aldo because I think he would just get torn up. But if anything, he could maybe try to hold a high guard and just try to push a pace on Aldo and maybe get him tired, because we all know Aldo's gas tank can sometimes not be the best. Aldo, still a very athletic fighter for being in the game as long as he has. And Pedro Munoz is not that good of an athlete, but he wins off of attrition and pressure. I think a weakness that Pedro Munoz may have is not blocking body shots very well, and Aldo throws very good body strikes. I think Aldo would do good in this fight to try to keep distance, try to fight like he did in the second Frankie Edgar fight, where he is basically the matador and landing counter strikes and pivoting out. If you haven't seen that fight, go watch that fight. Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar 2. That was an amazing performance. And that was when Frankie Edgar was on the best winning streak of his life, and Aldo just made it look easy. Not a lot of people are talking about this fight, though, and this is one of the best fights of the year, I think. But maybe that's just because I'm a closet Jose Aldo fan. How do I see this going? I think Pedro Munoz will probably get outstruck for the most part, but I think Aldo will also get tired over time. So it's just going to depend on how Aldo looks over the second and third rounds. As long as Aldo can stay fresh, I think he wins this fight. But if he starts to look a little rough later on in the second round, he may lose that round by just Pedro Munoz's aggression. And then if he starts to get even worse, then Pedro Munoz may win the third round as well and win a decision off of him. I don't see this going as a KO unless maybe Aldo's chin is shot or Aldo lands a good body shot on Pedro and folds him. In the fight before that, you got Michael Kiesa going up against Vicente Luque. Michael Kiesa coming up from lightweight. He's been at welterweight for a few fights now, and I have no idea how he used to make weight at lightweight because the dude is massive. He has mostly been winning his fights recently off of takedowns and basically just holding you on the ground, landing strikes occasionally. Not the most entertaining fighter, but he's pretty dominant at welterweight until his cardio starts to go a little bit, which is where Neil Magny was able to actually get a bit of success. I think it was the fifth round maybe that Neil Magny started to push the pace until he got taken down again. Vicente Luque coming off of that crazy fight against Tyron Woodley, where he basically put the nail in the coffin in Tyron Woodley's UFC career. That was when Woodley came out throwing everything he could into every punch and landing a few and taking a few as well until Luque eventually got the submission on Tyron Woodley, where he dropped him and then submitted him. Luque is not just a good striker, but he is also a good submission artist as well. It's not how he typically gets his wins, though. He's usually a knockout puncher. So Luque is coming off of that submission over Tyron Woodley, a KO over Randy Brown, which was awesome, and also a TKO over Nico Price. That was a dangerous fight for him, and I think he got hurt in that fight too. But before that, he got completely outstruck by Stephen Thompson. That's not going to make a difference in this fight, though. He hasn't really fought that many wrestlers, honestly, except for Tyron Woodley, but Woodley didn't even really try to wrestle him. So not many parallels for this fight here. Michael Kiesa, ever since coming up to welterweight, he has gone 4-0. In his last fight, he beat Neil Magny by a 5-round decision. Before that, he beat Rafael dos Anjos by decision, which we all know Dos Anjos is not great at wrestling, even though he loves to wrestle. Before that, he got a decision over the ghost of Diego Sanchez, who he definitely should have beat very handily and finished. He should have finished Diego Sanchez, but don't know what happened there. Maybe he was trying to be too safe. And before that, he beat the ghost of Carlos Condit by submission also. So doing pretty good, dominant at welterweight so far, and he wins a lot of times on his size. I think Michael Kiesa is going to control Luque on the ground for the majority of the fight until maybe the very end, where Michael Kiesa starts to gas a little bit. Because he doesn't have like terrible cardio, but he also doesn't have great cardio. And Luque could possibly push the pace on him and maybe try to get him in some grappling exchanges. But I see Michael Kiesa winning this one by decision. It's just we haven't seen Luque against that many wrestlers. So in this fight, I would say Michael Kiesa needs to try to strike as little as possible. Maybe throw like an overhand into a takedown. Get Vicente Luque trying to counter you. For Vicente Luque, I would say throw lots of high kicks to try to get Michael Kiesa holding a high guard. And when you're blocking high kicks, it's really hard to get a takedown off of that. So I would say throw high kicks, which Luque is actually very good at. Also, Luque would do good to throw body shots, because if you're throwing body shots and Michael Kiesa doesn't have the best cardio, that's going to work well. And also, if you're throwing body shots and Kiesa decides to hit a double leg on you, then you could maybe catch him while he is in transition. But overall, I see Michael Kiesa winning that fight. Tisha Torres is going to be fighting Angela Hill. That's a great fight. Song Yudong's going to be fighting Casey Kenny. Song Yudong coming off that loss to Kyler Phillips, where Kyler Phillips made him look stupid for 3 rounds straight, just in the striking department. He didn't even try to really wrestle him that much. Casey Kenny coming off of a loss to old man Dominic Cruz, which I thought it was a very close fight. I could have seen an argument for Cruz, but Cruz has been gifted so many decisions over the years, I just don't even care. Actually, that's a really close fight. I really don't know who's going to win that fight. That could be fight of the night also. Prospect of the night is going to have to be Rafael Fazeev, who is going up against Bobby Green. Fazeev is a killer, and he's even the striking coach for Tiger Muay Thai, which is where Peter Yan trains, and also Volkanovski. So 2 champions there, and they both win off of their striking. So you got to give it to Rafael Fazeev for teaching them everything they know. Bobby Green likes to mug. He's a decent boxer. He likes to do the Nate Diaz thing where he sticks the elbow out. Oh, and also he likes to hold his hands down low so you can punch at him. That got him in trouble against Dustin Poirier, who just kept throwing combinations until Bobby Green's head movement couldn't go any farther, couldn't do any more layers of head movement. I see Rafael Fazeev kicking up Bobby Green's legs, hurting him pretty bad with the leg kicks, and then probably landing a knockout punch. But Bobby Green has been, in his most recent fights, he has been on a tear with his wrestling. So if he tries to use his wrestling on Fazeev, that could maybe do something different that Fazeev hasn't seen that much yet. So credit to Bobby Green for changing up his style later on into his career and not just going out there and mugging people. He's actually trying to win rounds now off of his grappling, which is actually pretty good grappling. I'll give it to him. He doesn't have the best record, though. 27-11-1. It's not very good, but Rafael Fazeev is only 9-1, so not a lot of experience there either. I think Rafael Fazeev will get the knockout, though. He is very underranked for how good he is. I think he is the future of the division, the lightweight division. Let's see, the only other good fight that I'd say you should watch on this card is Alonzo Menefield versus Ed Herman. There's bound to be some stupidness in that fight. Alonzo Menefield just basically is another meme fighter where he's like all power and like that's about it. And he's built like a tank, and all he does is throw hooks basically. Ed Herman is known for that fight where he was getting outstruck by Mike Rodriguez for the entire fight, and then he said he got fouled on somehow. I don't remember if it was an eye poke or a knee to the groin or what, but he took like 5 whole minutes to recover from the beating that he just took, and then right afterwards he got Mike Rodriguez in a submission and won the fight, and everyone was just like, what just happened? Like, that's not fair, right? But he did it. Anyway, there's a ton of fights on the early prelims too. It's just a lot of filler. The fights that I talked about and said were good fights, I would say you need to watch those. That is my advice for the casuals out there. But if you're a crazy person like me, then you watch every single fight on every single card. So that about wraps up the card. Thanks for listening, and I will catch you guys on the next one.